Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one."
Good morning. It's good to see everyone here. It's good to have Sandy back. It's good to be here. There is an epidemic in our nation today, or in our world today, and it is aside from the virus that has been going around for over a year now. And it is the lying epidemic. Many people, when they read this passage that Mike just read for us, they think it's about swearing oaths. They think it says you can't swear, like when you swear an oath to tell the truth in court. Which I think is funny, because what the passage is actually about is telling the truth. It's about integrity. And integrity is something that the world around us has more or less forgotten about, and it's forgotten about it for a while. Lying has become utterly accepted and utterly expected in public life nowadays. In fact, Time magazine published an article titled "Lying. Everybody's doing it." You know how when fashion trends come along and someone will say, "Everybody's wearing it. Everybody's doing it." Of course, that's the incentive to just join in. Again, hear the laptop. I hate that. It sounds like it's an airplane, and it's just going to take off. I can't deal with that. That's kind of the way that lying is approached nowadays. The idea is everybody's going to lie anyway. So why hold yourself to integrity when you know that everyone around you is going to lie? Because if they're not going to tell the truth, why should you be expected to tell the truth? See, we don't even expect people to be honest anymore. Whether it's in the realm of business, a lot of people look at the very successful people in the business world and they say, couldn't possibly have made all of that honestly. Right? Haven't you thought of that before? Because we expect them not to be honest. We say no one could possibly have made that much money honestly. In the realm of politics, I mean, that's the button not to push, right? We expect that people are being dishonest if they're in the realm of politics. How about the media? The news? It wasn't too long ago that the big thing to talk about was fake news. How the news networks were not being honest, and they were jumping on anything that seemed sensational enough to get them views. We expect people to be dishonest. That's how bad this has gotten. It's gotten to the point that we just accept that people lie. And we just accept that that's how the world works. There's a Bible and ethics professor His name is Randy Harris. He teaches at Abilene University. And each year he has his class take a test. And it's not a, have you studied this kind of thing, multiple choice test. It is a, what decision would you make in this given situation test? And he says to his students, let's say you have taken all your courses, you're on track to graduate. This is a university, of course. But you only have one class left to take. It's classic English literature. And so the teacher has you read Paradise Lost. And you say, it's the last class I need to take. So I'm going to read Paradise Lost. Fine. And then the teacher has you read, I don't know, Gulliver's Travels. And you say, fine, I'll read Gulliver's Travels. And then the teacher has you read The Grapes of Wrath. And you say, fine, I'll read Grapes of Wrath. And you get to the very end of the year, and you have all of your other classes where you have to study for the final exam. You have to get them right, because these are the classes that actually have to do with the job that you're wanting to have at the end of the university. And so you're studying for those real hard, and then the teacher says your final book that you have to read is Moby Dick. And you say, are you kidding me? I have all of these final exams that I need to study for. I am running myself ragged here, and I have to read Moby Dick. Have you ever read Moby Dick? And so you say, look, I'll just read the Spark Notes. I'll just get the summary so that I understand what the book's about, what happens in the book, and I'll be able to answer all the questions on the exam. Fine. So you read the Spark Notes, you get the summary, you know how to answer any question that might be asked on the exam. And so you get to that final exam. And I'll remind you. Randy Harris says, I'll remind you. This is the only class that you have left to pass. Once you get out of university, you have a job lined up. It's your dream job. You have a fiancé who is ready to marry you. And her mommy and daddy are ready to give her over to you, or I don't know, are ready to approve of him. I don't know. Maybe, I'm sorry. I'm a man, so I thought of that first. But the thing is, you have to have a good job in order for that to happen too. And you have your first place picked out. First place, just your own, away from mom and dad. But you're only going to be able to pay for it if you got that job. All of these things are now hinging on your final exam about Moby Dick. And so, Randy Harris says, your professor hands you the exam, and it's got one question on it. True or false? Did you actually read Moby Dick? Your future career, your future home, your future marriage is all hinging on whether or not you read Moby Dick and you didn't. And so, Randy Harris says, do you tell the truth or do you lie? And what he found, because he's the ethics professor, so he takes count of all of this, is that nearly everyone in his classes say they lie. And they justify it in various ways. I don't want to hurt my fiance. I don't want to hurt my chances of being successful. I could do so much good in this dream job. And they justify it in every way under the sun. And what Randy Harris came away with is the realization, the conclusion, that if the stakes are high enough, people generally lie. if they have to. But in the Sermon on the Mount, we find that Jesus is of the opinion that we should be the people who tell the truth, even if it costs us. You see, lying was a big problem back in Jesus' day, too. You remember when you were a kid, and when you told someone something, you could cross your fingers, right? And you could lie and it was okay. There was a way of doing that back in the first century too. The Jews believed that as long as you didn't swear by anything important, you could lie, and it was just a little thing. It wasn't important. And it was fine. You know, swear by the temple. Or even better, swear by the gold that is in the temple. Oh, you can be sure that person's going to stay true to their word, because they swore by something important. Well, what about something bigger? If you swore by heaven and earth. But if you didn't swear by anything, then, it was no big deal. You could lie, and it would be fine. And that's why Jesus said, don't swear by anything. An oath shouldn't add anything to your word. He says, don't swear by anything. Don't swear by heaven. Don't swear by earth. Don't swear by Jerusalem. Don't swear by even the hairs on your head. Now, was Jesus saying that Christians can't swear an oath? You know, where we're called upon as a witness because we just happened to be on the street when a robbery happened. We're called upon as a witness, and all of a sudden we're not allowed to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? That's not what Jesus is meaning. Or how about being sworn into office? If this is saying Christians cannot ever swear an oath, then Christians cannot ever hold office. Is that what Jesus is saying? No. No, Jesus is saying don't, because of two reasons. Reason number one, you have no authority over these things. Look at what he says in Matthew chapter 5. He said, don't take an oath at all, either by heaven. Why? Because that's God's throne. It belongs to him. Or by the earth. Why? Because that's God's footstool. It belongs to him. Or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. It also belongs to him. And don't take an oath by your own head. Why? Because you cannot make one hair on your head turn from white to black or black to white. We don't even have control over that. Don't swear by these things because you have no authority over these things. We as humans are so limited in what we control. We swear by anything, it basically doesn't even mean anything anyway. Because if I swore by the great state of Georgia, and I was lying, then per my word, I have to hand over the great state of Georgia? That sounds silly, because I don't own Georgia. It'd be even worse if I said I swore by my own head, because, So Jesus says, don't do that. You don't have control over these things. You think you're something that you're not if you're swearing by heaven and earth. If you're swearing by the holy city Jerusalem, if you're swearing by your own head, you don't have control over these things. So don't swear by them, because you really can't. But he says, reason number two, an oath shouldn't add anything to your word. He says your yes should be yes. your no should be no. What a revolutionary concept. That when you answer yes to something, you should mean yes. And when you answer no to something, you should mean no. He says anything else comes from the evil one because it is based on this idea that as long as the consequences are low enough, dishonesty is fine. And the truth is, it's not fine. Do you remember Revelation 21:8? You know, it's a little children rhyme. It's not especially creative how this rhyme came about, but it's just Revelation 21:8. Liars go to hell. Burn, burn, burn. I had to finish it. Revelation 21:8 says, "But as for the cowardly and the faithless," or that is treacherous, "the detestable, as for murderers, as for the sexually immoral, as for sorcerers, idolaters, and every liar, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." Take a look at the people that liars are listed next to. We have cowardly, which is people who, when the going gets tough, they get going in the wrong direction. Then we have the faithless, that is, those who are not loyal at all. We have the detestable, and that's a wide range of things. But then we have murderers. I don't think we consider any crime worse than murder in America. I don't think. Because as far as I know, it's the only one that ever got the death penalty in history. But also he says the sexually immoral. Those who are loose, those who cheat on their spouses, those who practice homosexuality, that's included in sexual immorality. And then he says the sorcerers and idolaters. Throughout all of Israel's history, it struggled with the idolatry around it and the idolatry infiltrating it. God was so serious about idolatry, if you've been in the Deuteronomy class, you already know, he had severe punishments for it. And then right after idolatry, he says, liars. Is lying serious? Do you think that the God, who is the God of all truth, takes lying seriously? Or do you think he believes that as long as you don't swear by anything important, it's fine? As long as you got your fingers crossed, it's fine. Or as long as the consequences for telling the truth were so high that you just could not bear it, then a lie is fine. He says, all the liars have their portion in the second death. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a part of the second death. The lake which burns with fire and sulfur, that's Revelation code language for eternal condemnation, eternal torment away from God. Lying is serious. Which is why Jesus said, don't even bother with swearing the oath, because your word should already carry all the integrity possible. Because lying is serious, and truth is serious. Honesty is the best policy. We say that to our children, right? To teach them to always be honest. We say that as a way of teaching them, and usually the message is a little skewed. Because usually we tell it in the context of, oh, little Billy was tempted to lie, but then he didn't tell a lie, he told the truth, and actually it turns out that telling the truth got him some kind of reward, or it all worked out, and he was happy, and whatever. That message is a little bit skewed to what reality is. Because usually that's not how the world works. If you look in Luke chapter 16, there's the parable of the dishonest manager. This is one that a lot of people get confused over, about what Jesus is meaning in it. And while he might not be especially meaning this, it does illustrate this. He said, verse 1, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Turn in your account of your management, for you can no longer be manager.' And the manager said to himself, 'Well, what am I going to do? My master is taking the management away from me. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am too ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do. So then, when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses.' So, summoning his manager's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, 'How much do you owe?' He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and write down 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, his cleverness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous gain or wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings.'" A lot of people get confused because it sounds like Jesus is commending dishonesty, and it sounds like he's commanding dishonesty. But in reality, he's pointing out the world does not operate on the honor code. It doesn't. The world doesn't actually care if you're honest or not. If you produce wealth through dishonesty, the world just sees the wealth. This dishonest manager said, I'm getting fired, so I'm thinking ahead. I'm going to commit some fraud so that the people I benefit from this fraud will say to me, "Hey, you helped me out, let me help you out, now that you're unemployed." And that's how the world works. You see, in that instance, dishonesty actually benefited someone. People still say honesty is the best policy? Or how about in Ecclesiastes chapter 4? Solomon says about many things, he says, I see this great injustice. I see this evil in the world. In chapter 4, verse 1, he says, "And I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of the oppressors was power, and there was no one to comfort them." The oppressors have power. The oppressors oppress because they're willing to do what they're not allowed to do, what they're not supposed to do. And so those who are under those oppressors, they cry out, and there's no one to comfort them, Solomon says. And yet, honesty is the best policy. Or in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, in verse 15 it says, "In my vain life I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, And there's a wicked man who prolongs his life because of his evil doing. Do not be overly righteous and do not make yourself too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Be not overly wicked and neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of this, and from that withhold not your hand. Because the one who fears God shall come out from both of them. This is another confusing passage because it sounds like Solomon is telling us, don't be overly zealous about justice and don't be like in the middle of the road. That's also not exactly what he's saying. Because, of course, this is in the context of Solomon being very disillusioned about what he sees in the world. He's talking about what he sees working in the world, succeeding. And he says, don't be too righteous, or else you're going to destroy yourself. But don't be too wicked, because if you're too wicked, then you get arrested and you get tried and you get punished. So just be like a little dishonest. And that's exactly how the world works. And we say honesty is the best policy. We need to be very careful about how we teach our children that. About what message we're actually giving them, because at some point they're going to be honest and they're going to get punished for it. Because the world doesn't actually care about honesty. And on top of that, if all of that seems so unjust, there's this in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Again, I saw that under the sun, the race does not go to the swift, and the battle does not go to the strong, and the bread does not go to the wise, and the riches do not go to the intelligent, and the favor does not go to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to all of them. So if on top of that, the disillusionment that, the world doesn't actually care about honesty isn't enough, there's also time and chance, where even if you are honest, it might just be that it's just not a time when you will receive rewards for your honesty. There were times in history like that. So is honesty still the best policy? And the answer is yes, but not for the reason that we usually teach our children. Honesty is not the best policy because you get rewarded for it in this life. But honesty is the best policy because we serve a God of truth. And that God of truth is the only God, the one true God. And that God of truth says this, why is honesty still the best policy if it doesn't get me what I want? How is honesty still the best policy if it doesn't get me what I want? Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, the end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it is good or bad, whether it is righteous or evil, whether it is good or wicked. God will bring every deed. He's also going to bring every word into judgment. And so, while it might not get you what you want here and now, and we need to stop insinuating to people that it will, honesty is still the best policy. Job says in Job 31, he says, I've made a covenant with my eyes. How then could I gaze upon a young woman? What would be my portion from God above, and my heritage from the Almighty on high? is not calamity for the unrighteous and disaster for those who work iniquity? Does he not see my ways and number all of my steps? If I walk with falsehood, and my foot has hastened to deceit, let me be weighed in a just balance, and let God know my integrity. Job says, it doesn't matter if I don't get anything for being honest. Let me be weighed with a just balance, and let God know my integrity. It doesn't even matter if everyone calls me a liar. Let God know my integrity. Because, a lot of people worry about the opinions of others. And I am under the distinct impression that there's only one person's opinion that actually matters. And that is God. Revelation 21:8 talked about all of those people who will have their portion in the lake of fire. But the verses just preceding it say this. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. There is lots of pressure to give in to the ways of the world. And part of that is, of course, lying. But God says, the one who conquers, I will be their God. And they are going to be my child. How do we conquer? 1 John chapter 5 says, everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has been born of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves whoever has been born of him. And by this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and we obey his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. They're not too much. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that overcomes the world. It's our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? There have been many, many times in history where those who truly follow God are put on trial. And I'm sure it's going to happen later in history too. And they're asked, do you believe that this Jesus fellow is actually the Christ? Do you believe he's actually the Son of God? And it's in a context where if they say yes, they die. Or if they say yes, they get their possessions taken away. Or if they say yes, something bad happens. And if they say no, they get off scot-free. The question is, if you were to be put in that position, let me be like Randy Harris at Abilene Christian University. If you were to be put in that position, and the stakes were that high, would you lie? Or would you tell the truth? There was a disciple of Jesus. He learned at the very feet of John the Apostle. His name was Polycarp. A bunch of people say Polycarp because it has a Y, but it's pronounced Polycarp. But he was 86 when he died. He was burned at the stake by the Romans, who he was delivered to them, and they just happened to be persecuting Christians in the area at the time. And they said, Polycarp, you are 86 years old. you are an old gray man. And you don't have to die like this. Just say that you don't believe that this Jesus is the Christ, and you get to go home and live out the rest of your days in peace. And he said, 86 days. My God, this Jesus, the Christ, has never turned his back on me. And I'm not going to turn my back on him when I'm at the very end. God never turns his back on us because God is a God of truth. And he's promised to be with his people. As Paul said at the very end of 2 Timothy, he has seen me through it all. The Lord has been with me through everything. I was thrown to the lions, and he saved me. And he will save me. He will deliver me, even if I die. That's why honesty is the best policy. Because this world is not all there is. The people who believe that if it benefits you, lie, are those who don't truly believe that there is something waiting for us after this world. That there is a reward if we remain faithful to Christ. So remain faithful to Christ. Cling to him. Attach yourself to him. He commanded us to believe, to repent of our sins, to confess our faith in him, to be baptized into Christ for the forgiveness of our sins. And he also commanded us to live faithfully to him, even if it costs us. And a part of that is this complete honesty that Jesus talks about, where we're so completely honest that we don't even need to swear. Not like swear like cuss words, but swear as in an oath. It doesn't add anything to our word. You know, if you get called up as a witness, and they put the Bible in front of you, and they say, put your hand on the Bible, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You know, Jesus isn't prohibiting you from doing that. That's not what he's talking about. But he is talking about the fact that even that shouldn't add anything. Because if something is full, can it be filled further? No, of course not. If you have full honesty, it cannot be filled further, even by an oath. Honesty is important. Lying is serious. Even if it's a little thing. Even if it's a white lie. I hate that phrase, little white lie. Because white is the color for purity, right? And there's nothing pure about a lie. But Jesus says, be faithful even unto death. Revelation 2, verse 10. And I will grant you a crown of life. If you have a reason to respond to the invitation this morning, like I said, lying is an epidemic. And I wouldn't be surprised if any one of us has a problem with it. Because it just gets into your life. Because it can be justified in so many ways. If you have a reason to respond to the invitation, you can do so now. You can come to the front as together we all stand and sing together.